All right, welcome everybody to another episode of VALR Unfiltered, Money, Meaning, and Society. And today I have the great pleasure to talk with Anton Gulin, who is my dear brother. We've worked together for many years and known each other for many years. And it's going to be a very fascinating episode. Welcome, Anton.
Thanks for having me, Ben. Nice to see you.
Anton, today we have a very interesting episode, and I'm excited about it because we're going to be focusing our discussion on Russia and everything that's happening around Russia in the context of Bitcoin. So my intention is not so much to get into the politics of it, in any controversial way, but rather to look at Russia as one of the great countries in the world where the adoption of Bitcoin and crypto at large matters and it has an impact. And so, Anton, of course, is Russian, grew up and, was born and raised in Russia. Currently, however, he's based in a town called Kotor in Montenegro. Now, I don't know this town, but according to Anton, it's a historical town. So I don't know, you can always elaborate if you wish. But Anton, before we start, I would love it if you could introduce yourself a little bit, your relationship to Russia, and perhaps how you kind of got into the crypto space.
Absolutely, Ben. Thanks again for having me. So, as you said, I was born and raised in Russia. I lived there till 2019, and then just left to see what's just outside of it. Just seeing where I can fit and what I can do. I have been into the crypto space since the end of 2017. I got there pretty randomly, as most of us did. I was working with an entrepreneur from America who just invited me to work with him and service a couple of his peer clients who were into this blockchain area, something new and hypey. And I mean, you're gonna find out what's it all about, and that's that. And man, it's been crazy years after that, honestly. So ever since I took a step into the blockchain industry, things just got way faster than they were before. I don't know, what is it? Is it just how world is after COVID, or is it just the time we live in is just so fast? But yeah, interesting time to be alive, honestly. Very interesting time.
Wonderful. So, Anton, I'm going to rely on you for pretty much everything in this podcast. I know very little about Russia. I've never been to Russia. And generally, I'm not a very politically minded person. I just try to avoid politics and avoid it like the plague, to be honest. However, it's important, and I do believe that Russia is one of the great nations in the world, and so I look at the world from the idea, or based on the premise, that no country is perfect. Politics are generally not clean wherever we look, and so with that in mind, I just look at people, I look at humanity, and I'm very optimistic about the future of the world. So with that in mind, I would love to ask you some questions, and you can guide me, hopefully, to some truth. So, Anton, maybe first what we can do is you can help me to understand a little bit the Russian economy. What does wealth look like? What does wealth distribution look like in Russia? And slowly but surely we can paint a picture of, Russia in terms of, in monetary terms. We can start there before we head over to Bitcoin.
Okay. I'm going to do my best, Ben. So starting with wealth. Wealth sticks to infrastructure and service providers that are working around the infrastructural projects and sectors of economy. It's basically everything that can be taken out of soil, produced from it, or built on it, or planted in it. the wealth distribution across the country sticks to the pretty same logic. So the regions that are rich with energy resources are generally wealthier than those without it. And wealth is aggregated in the local centers, but then all the roads lead back to Moscow. So Moscow aggregates everything, and it's the central piece of the Russian economy.
But what about in society? So are we looking at a place with extremes of poverty and wealth? Are there, for example, VALR is, of course, mostly serving South Africa. And in South Africa, there are townships and there are, gated communities. So what are we looking at when we talk about general everyday life, city life? Are there the extremes of poverty and wealth? Are there many homeless people? What's the reality there?
There are great extremes of wealth and poverty across all of the countries of BRICS, to be completely honest with you. So these countries are very unequal in terms of the society, but are very rich in the energy resources and power, because eventually the holders of energy resources still matter and will matter for a while now.
Right. Okay, that's interesting. So, Anton, we come to our favorite topic of fiat.
No.
So, the Russian ruble, I guess it's called, or would you say ruble? Ruble or rubble?
Ruble.
Ruble.
In
okay.
Russian, it's ruble.
Yeah. Okay, fine.
Ruble.
So the Russian ruble. Can you paint a little bit of a picture around this particular fiat currency? How is it doing? How is it being held together, if at all? I know there's been a lot of volatility over the past few years, but that's true for pretty much any fiat currency. And I think very related to that, maybe you can talk a little bit about Russia's relationship with gold, its gold reserves. Let's try and paint a picture of kind of Russia's economic position in that regard.
Okay. Well, to start off, Russian ruble in Russia is called the wooden one, just for the joke of it, because it's just that. But the thing about that, Russian ruble is kind of living and breathing despite everything that has happened to it, even in the newest history. So Russian ruble has been in the play since 1992. It was the new version of the Soviet ruble. But think of it. Even if we just ignore the devaluation of the end of the 90s, which was crazy, and everybody just has forgotten about it. Now it's down 71.5% to US dollars since the financial crisis of 2008, when ruble was the strongest in the newest history. But it is what it is, we just can't do anything about it. But I sincerely think that the Russian central bank is doing a decent, protective and conservative job in keeping the ruble together. As for the gold, Russia is pretty rich in gold reserves that are held on the special vault, the balance, and within the soil. So as far as I know, the central bank of Russia is holding around 2.3 thousand tons of gold, and this hasn't changed much since 2019. So after the sanctions pressure got harder, the Russian central bank was mostly selling the foreign currency reserves. So they didn't touch gold at all, which tells a lot, to be honest.
Yes. So the gold is actually held in the country?
That's a very good question. Part of it is, part of it isn't. So there is definitely a mix of holdings which is relevant to any country.
Yeah, that's very fascinating, isn't it? Because
it is.
If the gold is not held in the country, then whoever custodies. Right? Well, I don't know, whoever custodies it for you, because of course we've seen some very crazy developments a few years ago when some of the I guess fiat holdings foreign reserves of Russia were frozen, basically confiscated, you could say. So of course that can happen to gold as well. I'm surprised it hasn't, to be honest. If Yeah, it's very interesting. So I mean, of course we cannot avoid it. We know that Russia is among the countries heavily sanctioned, and so to understand this a little bit. Well, what I want to understand about it is how does that affect regular Russians, including maybe yourself? It depends on how you're set up. But how does it affect regular Russians, especially those traveling or living abroad? And I guess, maybe we can talk a little bit wider into kind of international trade and just kind of like what's the effect of these sanctions?
Okay. Let's start from the greater picture about the general context of sanctions and how it affected. Like every other global crisis, it just created a window of opportunities for those who have been ready for a while. You can still buy sanctioned products from the West in Russia. You can still buy sanctioned energy resources of Russia in the West. So everything just costs way more than it used to. But I believe that sanctions failed to achieve the expected result, but pushed the global economy into the sink or swim situation, where the market naturally found the balance like it always does. Demand always meets the supply at some point, right? So as for the regular Russians, I think the biggest challenge is the diminishing purchasing power of Russian ruble against the other currencies. You have to pay more rubles to spend less US dollars, yuans, euros, whatever. But the next challenge is for those who are living abroad. It got better over the years, but generally it is a frenzy, and it's witch hunting at its best. So sanctions themselves are pretty concrete, and what's left for the market participants is to enforce them. However, the company's risks and compliance departments tend to oversimplify the sanctions and expand them over what's needed, just in case. So regular Russians traveling or living abroad were never the targets of sanctions, and yet they felt them the most. But there's more to that. So with Russians, that hit Belarusians at the same time. So basically, both Russians and Belarusians got cut off from most of the infrastructure of Europe and the globe. But now it also is the same with the Ukrainians. So there are a lot of Ukrainians who get their accounts closed just because they're Ukrainians. And you just wonder, you have so many questions about that, which you will not have any answer to. But you just tend to realize that you should just always follow the money and see the beneficiary of every crisis that happens on this planet. They're always different, to be honest, but it's just that.
Yeah, very interesting. Maybe to bring it more to an everyday life. For example, in Russia itself, what do people generally hold or save in to try and have some store of value? Or like, for example, can you get US dollar? Is there a black market for US dollar? Do people hold gold themselves in their own lives or jewelry or whatever it is? How does that work inside of Russia?
Mm-hmm. So Russians are very big on the property market. So they invest heavily in the property. So this is like a kind of vault. So the wealthy Russians buy lands, they buy flats, they buy houses, and it's just kind of a storage. But for those living in the middle class or below it, there is a catch. So the Russian central bank doesn't allow you to buy more than 10,000 US dollars. I think it's total per bank account, but generally that's not more that you can have. For the black market, yes, the gray market of Western Europe is one of the most developed and efficient out there. I can tell you that with 100% certainty. And it's not just Russia, it's the combined post-socialist countries. It's just overcoming the difficulties is just stick to the DNA. You can't get rid of it. You just do, you just overcome everything every day.
Right. But what are we looking at? Is it markets for euro, for US dollar? Are people saving in antiques? Is it you know, I don't know, special carpets, or what is it that people are kind of, what are people collecting to kind of build up some form of stability in terms of wealth?
Carpets on the walls are the big cultural thing in Western Europe. My Western Europeans, big up. But honestly, it's just been like that. The people are usually storing the foreign currencies. So when the central bank's ban on the purchasing of dollars was imposed, the crypto market and specifically the Tether and the USDT grew crazy. So the amount of, the penetration of crypto in everyday's life just skyrocketed. So it just pushed the people of the region towards something that was there waiting for them. But if you think about it, Tether is a great alternative to investing in US dollar, and they have their euro stablecoin, and they have their gold-backed stablecoin, and there is plenty of value that crypto and blockchain brings to the world. We cannot deny that anymore, and that's why we have so many big corporates embracing the blockchain and the Bitcoin infrastructure, and that's why we're seeing the talks about the federal reserves and the governmental reserves of Bitcoin. We're just too early, but crypto is the way that will definitely die out at some point, but it will change into something more stable, and how we transfer, own, and hold the value. Because now, by 2025, crypto is in a weird condition. So the whole meme tokens thing is crazy, So every bull market, there was something. So first, there were those crazy airdrops, So then there was those tap games. Now there are these meme coins. So this is not about value. This is something about the gambling. Basically, it's not value, But those great companies and those great products and value holders like Bitcoin are definitely there for general public to embrace and to utilize.
It's very interesting. When I was in, first of all, when we used to work together, like Russia was, I think you were Russian. I think you were the country manager for Russia, by the way, if I remember correctly. Right.
At first I was.
And Russia was, of course, it was like one of the desired markets. Like it's difficult to get access to that market. But we always knew like there is a lot of demand in Russia for crypto, whether it's USDT or Bitcoin. And I'm not sure, I don't know if algorithmic trading is a big thing or prop trading firms. But when I was in Dubai, actually, I met quite a lot of Belarusians and some Russians. First of all, there was a great demand for USDT. So a way to offload either Russian ruble or to offload offshore Chinese yuan. The idea like, okay, we have all this Chinese yuan, like we need to like get rid of this and get some USDT. So while of course on the Chinese side, what China was hoping for was for the Russians to use the Chinese yuan to come back to China to buy products, manufacturing products. But instead, it's like, nah, let's exchange it for USDT. So that's something that I saw was a very interesting dynamic. But my sense was that the OTC markets in Russia, so whether it's P2P or kind of my sense is that's a pretty vibrant market. So can you give a bit of insight into how people in Russia get Bitcoin, get USDT? Do they meet each other in alleyways, on the streets, in the park? What is it? What's the way?
Oh my man, the OTC market in Western Europe is the best, honestly. I've been around the world. I've tested different OTC desks, and if you speak about the service in the Western Europe is just next level. So you can convert your crypto in the beautiful building with a great office, with a great view, with coffee or some drink or whatever. There would be somebody nice who is talking to you and explaining you everything on the way, and you can get this type of service. You can, of course, do everything online through P2P, or you can do it in the alleyway, right? But I think the most important thing, right, is that it's very vibrant, as you said. You can find the supply for any demand you wish. And this is something that is very true in Western Europe. So you can find anything, literally anything, if you wish and if you will pay for it. So it's the same with crypto.
I'm very fascinated. You keep bringing up Western Europe. So are you telling me that when Russians want to trade in bulk, I mean like in big amounts, they go to Western Europe? Is there no OTC market active in Russia itself?
Mm. There is active market in Russia itself, but I just think that the properties of the local Western European market is generally the same. It's very service profiled, because most of the post-socialist countries are developing in their own unique way, and you cannot deny that, right? But there is something that just lives in all of us that gives us some special sense to the service, and to the high sense of service. I don't know how to explain that, but even when you are just living abroad, and when you got to meet some business owners who came from some post-Soviet country or from Western Europe, as I tell, from Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, whatever.
So are we, sorry,
You can see the quality.
So are we talking Eastern Europe or Western Europe?
We're talking about Western Europe. Eastern Europe, my bad. My super bad. My super bad. Yeah, you see, it's the morning. Okay. It's the morning they got me. It's the Eastern Europe.
Okay. Now it starts to make sense. Okay, I was like,
why? Make sense. It does make sense. My bad, my man.
No worries. So what you're saying is basically... So
You got me.
No, it's okay. Now it starts to make sense. So you're saying like just generally across Russia and Eastern Europe, post-Soviet, the OTC market is very vibrant, and the service is very good when you go. Okay, this makes more sense, Anton. I was getting very confused. Okay.
Guilty as charged.
Okay, no problem. We'll put some disclaimers in the in the description. No, that's perfectly fine. Yeah. So, okay, that makes sense. And then, how does my sense, I've been to Dubai, and that's kind of where I saw some of this vibrancy. It seems, and there were a lot of Russians in Dubai and around that area. Does that play into the same kind of economy in that sense?
No, Dubai is just the city of the future. So it just embraced everybody from the globe who are willing to build and bring some value. And in this regard, it's just like that. And there are people who are providing value. There are people who fit on it. And that's that. That's Dubai. Dubai is different. Dubai is a completely different entity from anything across the globe.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. That's actually a good point. It just brings together everybody. And that's very fascinating. All right. So, Anton, then we come a little bit to Bitcoin and crypto maybe at large. How have you seen how have you seen adoption take place over these years? You know, what's been the evolution in Russia?
Oh my God. It's been a ride. It's definitely been a ride. So the early Russian adopters were the ones who were using it as the currency of trade at darknet markets. So all of the markets have been there. It's just that. But then came the mining boom, and ASICs just flocked into the country in the containers, just trains full of containers with ASICs just flocked into mostly Siberia. And the early businesses got very good deals with the local energy producers or distributors. And they were mining on behalf of their beneficiaries, as well as offered some co-locations. And honestly, Bitcoin mining changed and upgraded the Siberian economy in a great way. So Irkutsk is the mining capital of Russia, and no doubt in that. And eventually it created a lot of side economical benefits, because there is a whole market to service it. There is a need to service the ASICs. There is a need to do the customs. There is a need to do the logistics and everything. So yeah, but then after, the famous events happened, I would say, Bitcoin got Bitcoin became something more. It became something that the locals couldn't just ignore anymore. And the media started to write more topics about it, and the government started to do something to test, just to see how it goes. And things have been developing in a pretty decent and natural way. It's just like everywhere else, I guess.
Yeah, but so first of all, when we talk about Siberia or Irkutsk, I think if you said, um, yeah, what do they? How do they mine the Bitcoin? Is it coal, burning coal, or is it like what is it?
No, listen, Siberia has a lot of energy resources, so it's not just coal, it's hydro plants, it's just the other means of, but mostly it's hydro plants, honestly, and they're extremely powerful. And there are data centers that there were. It's important to say that there were, like, it was like that, but after Bitcoin mining became legal and official in autumn 2024, things changed. So before, yeah, there was an energy distributor, and there was data center that was literally connected to it, and they got a great deal, and it was very decent. I think it was a very decent deal.
Are there any government mining facilities, known government mining facilities, or is it just private people?
That's the thing. So now, under the Russian law, you cannot mine Bitcoin if you are a power supplier or if you trade the energy resources. So I'm not sure how it's gonna work officially and on the ground, but I'm sure that there is some gray area that allows for some developments that can be seen and welcomed by the government.
So, as soon as we come to the subject of the government, it's, for me at least, I feel like it's been all over the place. I remember news when it said, okay, the Russian government recognizes Bitcoin, and then it bans Bitcoin. Then it's conducting global trade or trade with China using Bitcoin or stable coins, whatever it is. Um, then I think there was some limit, like, okay, people can buy it, but only a certain amount per year or something like that. So where are we now? Like, what's the actual status of Bitcoin / cryptocurrency in Russia? What's the legality of it? Are there any exchanges that are kind of semi-regulated? co-opted by government? What's the idea?
Well, as I said, it's like a gray sandbox regime, So Bitcoin mining is legal since autumn 2024. It's completely recognized. So you have to be a sole proprietor or a corporate to mine without any limits, or if you are just a regular enthusiast, you can mine with a cap of 6,000 kilowatt hours. And essentially that's that. But you theoretically have to pay for crypto that you own as well, right? So not just the one that you mined. But crypto ownership is still in the gray area. So there is no explanation on what's what by the Ministry of Finance. And there are, however, exact terms on how to pay the taxes from the tax authorities. So it creates a very weird situation. And under Russian law, there are digital assets that are fully regulated and recognized. But in reality, these are just digital derivatives. And so some banks and asset managers are exploring the various options for their clients. But the best thing that I've seen so far is the structured obligation that is linked to the iShares Bitcoin Trust by BlackRock. But it's not real Bitcoin ownership. It's just the way for the corporates to try something that's all over the place. And we need to understand that. Honestly, the digital assets as they are sound more like something from the tokenization area, because it would make a lot more sense, because there is a lot of things that you can tokenize in Russia, and the offerings of such tokenized digital assets can be accepted pretty well, in my opinion, by the investors across the globe. Yeah, but that's just for the regulations, because despite those regulations, everything lives and breathes, and it's the general thing with everything about the gray area in the Eastern Europe, right? So you decide how to work with the set of laws, and if you find something that's working, go for it until you have somebody knocking at your door. And that's just that. There was a very famous and funny conversation between two C-levels on the St. Petersburg economic forum. So one C-level speaks to the other. What is your KPI for this quarter? The other one sells. The biggest KPI is not get to jail, That's the biggest one. And that's that. That's just that. That's just that.
Yeah. Well, that doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't give me a lot of confidence.
Yeah.
But I guess it's the same reality in a lot of places, to be honest. I guess China is more strict. Yeah, that's kind of what it looks like to me. So basically, what are the major exchanges in Russia now?
Okay, so the biggest one that was closed was called Grantex. Everybody knows it, and this was like the big, flag for the OFAC that should get sanctioned as quick as possible, and they got to it. Now there are a couple of other local exchanges like Upsex or something like that, but you have to understand one important thing, that the Russian market and the Eastern European market is very tax savvy. So you can only have a great success if you are a product-led company. So if you create the product that solves the issue of the general public, you can get to their minds and their wallets. And so the biggest local exchanges and OTC desks have their own cash tellers across the country, where you can just come, give your ruble, exchange it to USDT or any other currency. And that's that. And that's really that. So as for the semi-governmental thing, listen, it's a very sensitive topic, honestly, because everything that works for a reason, right? And this is something we have to understand.
Yeah, I understand. So, Anton, what is the chance of a Russian Bitcoin strategic reserve? What are the chances of that happening?
I honestly think it's a no-brainer, like a no-brainer. So given the amount of hash rate that Russia currently has and what it could achieve, it's just a no-brainer. But not with the current central bank office. They are super protective and see crypto and Bitcoin as a cancer to the system. And if you think about it, they have a point, right? Because crypto is used to overcome the restrictions that they impose to protect Russian ruble and the Russian economy. So truth is somewhere in the middle, but I think some flexibility is needed to embrace it. And this is not something that is the feature of the current central bank office. They are super conservative and protective.
Yes, that's also my sense. Interesting. So, okay, Anton, for the final part of this this conversation, I really want to know what you expect over the coming years. How you think that, especially Bitcoin and maybe also something like USDT or maybe crypto at large. How do you see this play out in Russia? Do you see it becoming more prominent? Do you see global trade between Russia and other trading partners shift to digital assets like that? What do you expect for the Russian market and its uptake of crypto?
I think there's no going back from what happened over the past couple of years, and eventually this will place crypto into a special position in the coming years, as well as Bitcoin. But I think if we zoom out a bit, we should think about the potential biggest black swans. And this is what I want to talk to you about. So I honestly think that something big is going to happen to Bitcoin in the coming years, given the whole conspiracy about the quantum computing and the way how it can just decode and decipher the Bitcoin system as a whole. So the biggest question is, where are we going to pivot after? This is the question, because now we are relying on something that already has a feature that is not future proof, and this is something that triggers my interest and puts me into a position of having multiple thought experiments about that. But, it just doesn't make much sense until we see where we're going to come.
You are one of the very few people, because I know you know Bitcoin very well. You're one of the very few people who actually perceive quantum computing as a real risk. Now, I know that quantum computing develops fast. I also know that Bitcoin is highly secure. I also understand that there are, teams, although I don't know who they are. They might be the ones at MIT or whoever it is. But let's say we assume that there are people working on helping to make Bitcoin quantum proof. I don't know. I'm very surprised. I'm surprised that you see quantum computing as a true black swan risk to Bitcoin. It's interesting.
I do. Eventually, if you see that the biggest companies in the street are just creating the best and the biggest and the fastest quantum computing every season, and it just the data they provide is just crazy. So I guess God bless Nvidia, right, and their chips, because they're doing some great job, with everything that's going on in the market. But yeah, you just need to understand that when there is somebody who has succeeded in doing something positive, there's going to be definitely somebody who is going to try to utilize it in a bad way, so it's just that. And it's a very utilizable reason to shake the market, not to crash it, but to shake, because it's not about how it's going to happen. It's about how big the crash is going to be and how big are we going to bounce back.
Yes, I understand what you mean. So you mean to say you think that something like quantum computing could be used to create a lot, like to take away a lot of confidence in Bitcoin, after which it might recover, after which there might be some upgrades, some hard forks that fix that issue. But it's that transition that you think is a dangerous one.
Yeah,
that's an interesting thesis.
Here.
Yeah, that's an interesting thesis, Anton. I'm never happy to hear it.
I hope I'm wrong, man. I really hope I am. I really hope and I believe that I'm wrong.
Yeah. I understand. All right.
But looking at the global economy, we are heading into a very big crisis trap, because everything that we see is based on a promise that is provided by a loan. So it's not just sustainable, right? And at one point there has to be a way where the check would have to be paid, and how it's going to be paid is important, and what is going to be there to blame is also important. So I just think of it as just a part of a bigger picture that's gonna roll out in the coming couple of years. My bet is that the very big black swan event is going to happen within the next 3 to 5 years. Like it just has to.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, there are a lot of people, of course, who can see that the global economy is not built sustainably, and is about to pop, and whether that's on the back of a war or whatever it is, right? A kind of a recession narrative, or I guess an attack on Bitcoin. All these things would make sense. I just hope it's not completely correct, because of course we see Bitcoin as an important safe haven, and you hold it as a hedge, not just against kind of inflation. Like, losing 10% per year sounds very bad, but it's very different from, seeing a currency completely evaporate, of course. So there are plenty of Bitcoiners out there who hold Bitcoin, based on the assumption that at some point the US dollar and all other fiat currencies have zero value, infinite versus scarce. So of course, you're right. If Bitcoin was not there to catch you, actually, there's not much left.
So think about that.
Yeah, actual gold bars.
Actual gold bars are there for us, honestly. Because think about that. Have you heard about the electricity crisis in? I think it was in Spain. And Spain,
Portugal.
right? And Portugal, exactly. So 2 countries left without electricity for a day. What Bitcoin are you talking about when you don't have electricity or anything that connects you to the infrastructure that holds your assets at all, if they're not physically in your custody?
Yeah, very complicated. Yeah, very complicated.
Very complicated indeed. So, like, there is just so many things that can go wrong, like too many moving parts. Like, I'm not completely dramatic or depressive about it. I just think that there are risks that cannot be ignored, and everybody's strategy should factor them in at some point in some way.
So would you say you have a look? I think it's not, many people diversify their assets. Okay. However, when they diversify their assets, they're still assuming that the internet will work that, for example, I don't know, their apps work, right? Electricity works. So would you say you have a mindset of a Armageddon portfolio? Is that kind of how you think? So for example, yes, you have some Bitcoin. Yes, you need some cash, US dollar. Yes, you need some actual gold bars. Yes, you need a bit of jewelry. Yes, you need some food storage. I don't know, some is that your mindset? I'm curious.
Oh yeah. I am paranoid about that. Honestly, not to an extreme, but I think that we have to factor it in at some point and be prepared to what everybody thinks is bizarre.
Yeah, that's a very good point. It is a good point. I actually have a similar mindset, so I am optimistic about the future. No, it's true. I don't want this to turn into a dark episode, but I'm very optimistic about the future. But generally, um, yeah, I also have an assumption that the world might get to a terrible state, and I often think about that. Like, okay, if we have to go through an extremely dark period, like how do we, and it's not about survival. Like I don't actually think that being physically alive is the most important thing in the world. It's more about just how do we, right? It's just how do you, like, what is meaningful in life? And then so how can you, like, it's one thing for to go through life and, you know, things are relatively stable. You can still get around, cross borders, speak to each other online. But how do you live life gracefully if everything is falling apart? And I think that that is a question that I often ask myself. And I am actually the type of person who I never assume that I will have a long life. I actually never assume that. So I do actually have that mindset, albeit yeah, maybe I don't show it so much. But yeah, you brought it up. Thank you for that.
We're human, you know. We are all the same in the terms that at one point we're gonna embrace the end, and that's what brings us all together, you know. And
Yeah.
we're just that. We're just human after all.
No, that's very interesting. I think it is important. Just like, you know, let's say in regular Bitcoiner terms, Bitcoiners also need to think about their legacy. What happens if they die? You know, does anybody have their half of their seed phrase? Have they thought about how to transfer wealth? Like there are questions that we need to address. And you can do that on a at a personal level, and you need to do it at a societal level and yeah, infrastructural level. You know, in the context of peace and war, there's many elements that have to be considered. So that's very fascinating. It's not necessarily related to Russia. However, I can imagine that from your particular perspective, you know, yeah, you see more than somebody living in the Netherlands, for example, or in I don't know. Now I guess Spain also is on the list of unstable places. But I guess maybe that's what for you. Maybe it's what growing up in Russia has done. That you do actually take into account. Maybe that take into account that things are not always going to be
Oh yeah.
peaceful, right, and stable.
Yeah, and you know,
Yeah,
like the general joke around the place is about the nuclear fallout, you know. So when you have this in your culture, you just cannot ignore it, you know.
yeah, that's also very interesting. And we should take it. And it's sad, but we should take it serious. Like that is actually a very important thing. And you know, all of these podcasts that I've been hosting, I'm not sure. Maybe this is the sixth or maybe the seventh episode. This is not just talking about what's the price of Bitcoin going to do and assuming everything will be fine. We actually talk about the meaning of true wealth, right, and the meaning of true prosperity, and you know what's actually meaningful in life. That's why it's called unfiltered money, meaning, and society. So actually, I have to thank you for bringing up a very good point, which is, you know, we can't all just kind of expect everything to go according um, to an ideal path. And yeah, there may be many more things around the corner that we're not prepared for, and that you cannot prepare for everything. Um,
Yeah,
but
expectations
you
are
should.
just nonsense.
Yeah, good point. I think that's a very good point. Of course, I still want to know your, you know, your predictions for Russia, but yeah. So basically, one of the things that you've said there as well, you take into account the idea of a black swan event. Um, so that's good. I actually want to think more about that, and you know. let's keep in touch over the next few months and years, as we do if we can.
Yes.
And yeah, I think that's a very relevant topic that we should keep an eye on. So Anton, I want to thank you. It's a bitter thank you, but no, I want to thank you. I want to thank you genuinely. I'm very happy that we've had this conversation. Learn a bit more about Eastern Europe and Russia. Yeah, yeah, very fascinating. Thank you very much, Anton. And I hope our audience has also come to some new thinking because of your contributions.
Appreciate you, Ben, a lot, and thank you so much for having me. And I hope that this won't bring too much depression to everybody who's going to listen to us, and just let them see the world a bit wider.
Yeah, no problem, Anton. I think that's part of the Unfiltered podcast. You can pretty much speak your mind, and I think you've achieved that. So thank you very much. And to the audience, stay tuned for the next episode, of course.